Welcome, everyone. Hello. Hello to our speakers as well. I see a few of you already joining. It's exciting to have you here. So today, I'm so glad you could join today's session because I'm very excited not only about the topic, but also about our speakers here with us today. We'll be diving into a topic that's never been more relevant. That's the future of L&D maturity, how companies can move from reactive training to true performance impact. And we have, as I said, a fantastic panel. We have David James from 360 Learning, who will be moderating the discussion. We have Katie Coates, Director of Learning at McKinsey, and we have Mel MacMahon. He's a co-founder and CEO at Talaera. Just a quick recap of what we're doing. We'll be spending 45 minutes talking about all the topics that I mentioned, and then we'll have a few minutes towards the end to answer your questions as well. But feel free to interact in the chat. I love conversations when they're interactive throughout, so don't wait until the end. The session will be recorded, but I think those are the moments who make these sessions interesting when you can interact with our speakers and can get the most out of them. So yeah, I hope you enjoy. And David, I'll pass it on to you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Paula. And hello, everyone. Wherever you are in the world, please do let us know in the comments. As part of my introduction, I'll let you know where I am and stuff. I'll warn you in advance, Katie and Mel, I'll be asking you as well. What's that? It's very game show, isn't it? Tell us your name and where you come from. Um, so I'm David James. I'm Chief Learning Officer at 360 Learning. I'm also host of the Learning and Development podcast, and I'm delighted to say that that is the most downloaded and listened to L&D podcast in the world at present. And I'm also former Director of Learning Talent and OD at the Walt Disney Company. So plenty of experience in trying to spot the trends, spot the right trends, perhaps not back the wrong horse, and spend a lot of money and credibility in backing out of bad decisions. So I suppose our job here is to help you to spot those trends that are going to last and are worth putting some money on the right horse. Anyway, I think I'm going to send myself down the bad rabbit warren of analogies. So I think, Katie, I'm going to ask you to come and rescue me. Please do introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, David. I'm Katie Coates, and I am a director of learning at McKinsey and Company. I live outside of Philadelphia. I've been in the L&D space for over 30 years. Yeah, I started when I was really, really, really young. So I've been around this rodeo for a while too, and seen many, many different things come and go. So I'm excited to spend the next hour with you all talking about this.
Wonderful. Thanks, Katie. And Mel.
Thanks, David. My name is Mel. I'm the CEO of Talaera, which is it's an impact-driven, in the flow of work communications training platform. Prior to Talaera, I've worked in a variety of different companies, including as a quant at a quant hedge fund here in New York, writing predictive models. I spent a lot of time as a product manager at Microsoft, and spent a few years in Antarctica managing the South Pole Research Station. But that probably has a lot less to do with this particular topic than some of the other experience. Back to you, David.
Wonderful. Thanks, Mel. So what I'll do is I'm going to spend just a couple of moments talking about some of the backdrop behind the trends. There's a lot going on in learning and development right now, as there is in business. And what we want to help you with is paying attention to the signal rather than the noise. And of course, some of what's going on we're very aware of. I don't need to tell you, or it won't be new news, that AI is a massive disruptor right now. And there's some statistics on here. For example, 39% of workers' key skills are expected to change by 2030. Now, there's always been a need and an appetite for learning and development, but at no period before now have we expected that nigh on half the skills required in just 5 years' time are going to change. And so there's going to be people looking to us and leaning on us for support with that. And I think that if we look at the way that learning and development has been done for the last 30 years or so, perhaps we've been able to get away with providing some learning and then empowering the line managers and trying to motivate the learners. But we've always struggled there with measuring our impact. And when push comes to shove, we've I found it hard drawing a line between our effort and our investment and the impact that we've made. And sometimes we've needed to be a bit creative with that. But the need right now in business is for us to make a more predictable and reliable and demonstrable impact in our organization. So we're talking about the skills there that business needs. That also requires something different from us as well. So when we're evaluating our own skill set, and perhaps these are some of the trends that we'll be able to explore on here as well. What is it that is coming around the corner that we need to pay attention to? Now, I hear a great deal that learning and development folks saying, but there's so much in AI. What do I need to pay attention to? And Ross Stevenson, one of my favorite people to follow on LinkedIn, who really is getting his hands dirty on behalf of all of us in learning and development, is often asked which tools does he rely on and which tools does he recommend, and he always says, well, it depends what you want to do, which I suppose for the benefit of this isn't particularly helpful. But I think but what it's an indicator of is that it does start and end with us, and it starts and ends with what we are expected to do in our organizations, what our sixth sense is telling us we should be doing, and how we plot that path towards it, because there is absolutely no escaping that we're going to have to play a crucial role inside our organizations if we are going to make the changes and the advances that our organizations expect from us. Now, I'll throw one more stat at you that we've not got on here. The World Economic Forum published a report 2 years ago that said if we closed all the skills gaps between now and 2030, then we would unlock an extra $6.5 trillion to the global economy. Now, you tell me, a treasurer in any country, who doesn't want that unlocked, and tell me that your bosses don't want to take their slice of that pie. Now, what a brilliant story it would be that we in learning and development paid attention to the right trends, developed ourselves in the right way, and that we could have our fingerprints on that solution as well. Now, before I invite Katie and Mel into the conversation here, as with a lot of trends, and I said this with a wry smile at the beginning here, that paying attention to the wrong trends or perhaps the wrong voices, or perhaps the wrong marketing, what somebody used a word, gumbo or something in a podcast episode I did quite recently, and I thought it was quite funny, so I'll use that, marketing gumbo. Can make some expensive mistakes, and we're talking about 2030 a lot, as if that, this 2030 used to be the 2050, where we'd have 25 years to prepare for something, but the gap is shortening, so we really can't make the mistakes. And Fosway produced a report only early this month, and within that report stated the learning tech market's AI promises are not yet a reality. Only 10% of planned AI features are currently live with customers, and the rest, people, is on roadmaps. Again, that's we got to be really judicious with the decisions that we're making and who we believe in. So we're asking you to cast a cynical, if not critical, eye over the trends. With the questions that I'm asking the panel, I'm going to come to you, Katie, first. I'd like to ask you to answer these in the chat as well, because I'd love to know what it is that you're paying attention to, what's getting you excited, and perhaps where you are most cautious. Now, Katie, I'll come to you first. As I said, there's a lot going on in L&D at the moment. So what are the big trends that are most interesting to you in your role, of course, as head of L&D?
Yeah, so I'll talk about two things. And my role in McKinsey, just so I didn't say this earlier, I look after all of the folks at McKinsey who are not consultants. So I have about a 15,000 population of folks across 20 different departments that support the firm. And David knows this, I have been in the performance space for a very long time, really trying to push learning into the flow of work, really to have an impact on overall performance within the organization. And, this has been around since Gloria Geary, if you guys know that name, back in the 80s. We've been trying to do this, and we've always struggled with the right tech. because people have to go outside of the workflow to get to the tech to do this. And so we're super excited. And I think many organizations are looking at what's the potential of AI in this space to do this. We've mastered these methods around kind of workflow analysis and critical impact analysis and skill gap analysis and skills analysis, all of these things. How do we take that now in this world of AI and what's available and get the learning closer to the work? So we see potential here, and we're starting to experiment and get some positive results, but we've got a long way to go. The exciting thing is, as David mentioned, kind of work is changing. AI is causing work to change. And so we feel like we're able to get in now and influence kind of the new work design and build development into the work design from the beginning. So we're trying to make work is learning, learning is work, that they're interchangeable. And that is super exciting. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we're doing that later. That's the first thing. The second thing is data. And we believe that data will become more fluid over time. And this fluidity of the data will empower us to build a development ecosystem. And what I mean by that, so imagine a world where you have performance data in terms of from skill practice. You can pull in data from how people are doing in different skill practices, from simulations, from credentialing, all of those things. You have performance data from that end, performance management data from your performance review processes, your firm survey or organizational survey data like pulse surveys, employee satisfaction, organizational health. All of that data goes into like an interchangeable like database where it's analyzed, and you pull those business insights out of that, which can do a couple things. It can forecast skill needs, which is really important right now, given how fast things are changing. It can target specific development needs in the moment for a broad population. And it can also provide individualized, more personalized access to performance support, like where we need to lean in on performance support. We see that really powerful. That's really hard, but we see that as a really powerful trend in the future, which requires, and this is, I think, Mel, your space, like it requires more integrated teams working together. It requires kind of breaking down silos and having people figure this out. In addition to the tools and the systems that you need, but the skills in terms of working together to figure out how to do that. But again, if we can nail that, we think that's really powerful. So those are two things we're working on.
Yeah, brilliant. And so you mentioned there a couple of times, Katie, for the future, but you're working on that now. But you've got to think that pre-generative AI, what you're talking about would have been a mammoth task. It would have probably been so big that you would have thought it's not even worth us starting, but things have changed so much. And so for anybody who's not embarked on that journey, whilst it's difficult and time consuming, it's by no means insurmountable now.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Yeah, brilliant. And Mel, what trends are you paying most attention to and think that we should be paying most attention to right now?
Yeah, so I think for us, the biggest trend, obviously, is going to focus more on the communication side of things, given that's typically what we focus on. We're seeing a massive uptick in the number of customers that are coming to us for help with respect to not just general communications training, but cross-cultural communications training. And the reasons that they're coming for us are completely different than what they were 3 or 4 years ago. If you think back to like 2021, 2022, companies were well capitalized, retention was a big deal. Communication training back then, most of our customers were offering it as a perk. Today, it's being offered as a business need. And the reason for that is AI has empowered our customers to be able to tie communication skills and communication frictions directly to revenue. So when we have conversations with customers, we really want to get to the bottom of what's changing, what are the primary drivers for this, because that helps us inform, how we do business. And there's three, but the first one is kind of obvious, right? It's communication is the fabric that kind of binds organizations together. And when communications frictions occur, it sort of erodes that fabric. Everybody thinks that they're a pretty good communicator. I think I'm a pretty rock star communicator. My wife thinks she's a pretty good communicator. This morning, I was 100% convinced that she was bringing the kids to school, and she was 100% convinced that I was bringing the kids to school. And this happens more often than I would like. And by the way, she won the ensuing argument, so I brought the kids to school. That also happens more than I would like. But anyway, it's beside the point. The point is each and every one of you on the call can probably think back in the last 24 hours to some communications mishap. And those are the ones that you observe. The ones that you don't observe are the problems. It's kind of this hidden tax on businesses. And if you scale it up for yourself over days, weeks, months, years, what's the individual impact? Scale that out across the size of your organization. And here the numbers are quite staggering. It's on the order of, I think, $60 million for a company larger than 10,000 people, 10,000 employees, 60 million a year lost to communication. But I'm telling you things that you already know. What's really changing here is post-pandemic, companies have become exceedingly good at operating globally, at managing remote teams. And so instead of the previous sort of hierarchical outsourcing approach that we have, now we're in a world where companies are able to capitalize on cost-effective pockets of excellence that are distributed globally, but functionally integrated. So you might have a full-on engineering division in Bangalore that's managing other engineers in the United States, call centers that are being built in the Philippines, HR and finance that's being built out in South Africa for a UK headquarters. And all of these individuals are now communicating on Zoom, much like we are here, or Microsoft Teams, or whatever the case may be. So you take these communication frictions that you experience normally and then amplify that by the fact that the person you're speaking with might not speak English as their native language, and then further amplify it by the fact that even if you are speaking with somebody effectively in English, culturally, the cultural norms might be completely different. The way they understand you might be completely different. And then you've lost all of the physical touch points. So all you see is at best facial expressions. And then the cherry on top of all of this is AI. For two reasons that we're observing, and I'd be curious to get everybody else's thoughts on this. First of all, it's increasing the baseline expectation for communication. People who were pretty poor communicators before, in an asynchronous world now, are able to write very succinct emails, highly polished briefs that are, eloquent and on point. Even each and every one of you probably has regular conversations with Claude or ChatGPT, and it always answers in like a highly polished way. And then you start to expect your colleagues to be able to deliver answers to your questions in the same way. So overall, the baseline communication has improved, but when you get into the synchronous world, things are much trickier. And the other thing then is AI is now actually allowing you to directly link communication skills across your organization to revenue or to lost revenue, as the case may be. And so when people come to us, they're able to quantify the loss, and then they're able to effectively quantify the ROI, which is something that was never capable before large language models. And the reason I call it the cherry on the top, and then I'll wrap up this long-winded spiel here, is, I mean, for us as a company, this is great because it allows us to quantify our value proposition, which prior to generative AI was trickier. But from an L&D perspective and from an organizational perspective, the ability for generative AI to go in and uncover the inefficiencies, not just from a communications perspective, but across the entire skills framework, allows L&D to identify the problems, address those problems, and move themselves from a support role into something more aligned with a business critical role, which I think in the world we're in today is kind of the right place to be. So yeah, sorry, that was a little bit on the long-winded side, but these are the sort of trends along communication we're seeing.
Well, Mel, Chris has given you a digital nod of the head. The challenges that you outlined there, as he said in the chat here, that he and his company face this a lot. And then what I'd like to sprinkle on top, I mean, we knew before what each other's trends were, but I didn't realize just how much they would interconnect, because mine is L&D's general strive for impact. I think our colleagues across organizations are feeling twitchy that making learning available seems to be a short-term game, that might be what people are expecting, but that's not what's going to keep them in a job and help them to prove their impact over time. And so whilst the expected and requested version of learning and development isn't particularly mature, it's courses, platforms and content, that's what people expect and that's what people generally enjoy, there is no way of demonstrating the impact of that. And so L&D need to increase their maturity to challenge their, well, first of all, get to the stakeholders, challenge those stakeholders to consider outcomes and use data, as you'd said there, Chris, quantify the impact of the status quo in order to build a case and do something that is planned for impact. But that's never given to you. You'll never get permission for it. We have to earn our stripes, earn our credibility in order to gain the access and turn that access into influence to impact what you guys were saying, performance from your perspective, Katie, and actually addressing those challenges that are costing our organizations a huge amount of money, as you outlined, Mel. Now, Katie, if I can come back to you, you stated that many organizations are experimenting with AI in L&D. So what does it take to integrate AI and data into everyday learning in the flow of work so that it scales and aligns with business strategy?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that we're doing right now, the example, and it's interesting, you just talked about kind of getting a seat at the table, improving things. So I worked on a project many years ago where it was taking a long time to competency. Like we were taking 2 years for people to get up to speed. And I came in and it was a change process. I had to bring them on a journey. I'm like, what you're doing now isn't working. And we embedded kind of performance support into kind of their onboarding, and we started with learning from real work instead of like learning topics, right? And we had such impact with this project, like we cut the time to competency from 2 years to 6 months. They trust us now. We are like at the table because of the data that we had and because of the impact that we had. They trust us. So now their world is completely shifting because of AI. And some of the roles that do really foundational work, AI, we're finding AI can do kind of 70-80% of that, right? So we have a project which is really cool. It's a transformation project, but we're integrating. We have our talent people at the table who are looking at the job descriptions, like working with the leadership and subject matter experts. What does this new world of work look like, right? What are the job descriptions? What's the technical competency model for that? What kind of people skills do we need? The learning is in there, kind of absorbing all this, helping with the skills analysis piece and saying, okay, this is how we're going to have to develop people in this new world. And we have this great opportunity to do what I said earlier, design the work with development in mind, right? And then we have recruiting in there too, because they have to understand what we have to recruit for the future. We have our PAM, which is our people data team, that is in there helping us figure out what data we need to wrap all of this together. So we have this really cool integrated team. And they're working through this. And as we're designing the new workflows, we're also saying, okay, this is where an AI agent is going to be really critical, or this is where we'd like to see something that's multiple agents working behind the scenes, kind of swarming to figure this out. This is a space where, okay, there's a knowledge, if you think about a consulting firm, our knowledge database is big, right? We have this knowledge database. We're probably going to have to keep some of the old stuff for right now here until AI can handle what we need it to handle in this space. So we're really looking at that and creating that in a partnership with this integrated team. And we're finding it really, really powerful.
Brilliant. A couple of things resonate with me there. I was fortunate at Disney, as I mentioned in my intro, I had learning, talent, and OD. And so that was already integrated. So when I'm then working alongside workforce planning and compensation and talent acquisition, those are just 3 more other people. The power and the leverage that you gain is incredible. But the part that you intimated in there, which I think is really critical, is the vision. So you've decided, you've looked and you've gone, like, we can or should occupy this space, and then you've got the team together. Because so many people, and I bet you that there are going to be some folks in attendance with us today, will be thinking something like, well, I'd love to do that, but I don't have the permission, the relationships, or anything else. But you'll never convince people unless you have a compelling case. I suppose that's the benefit of being in an organization for a long time, coffees, listening, and all the good stuff, Katie.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Brilliant. And Mel, if I could come to you, you mentioned that when teams work across cultures, miscommunication can derail performance. What are the most effective ways for L&D leaders to build cross-cultural communication skills that lead to clearer feedback, stronger collaboration, and better results?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's actually a fairly straightforward one for me to answer because we've modeled that internally on how we build out our product, and it's been in response to what we hear from all of the L&D teams that we work with, what they're sort of pushing us towards. I suppose the one-liner is sort of like in the flow of work. Everything should be in the flow of work. And we were talking about this internally the other day. It feels like, ironically, AI is this technological leap forward. From an L&D perspective, it's allowed us to take training back to sort of pre-industrial days where you sat right beside your mentor or your, this sort of like master apprentice role, and everything you were doing was like, oh, try this, do that, check this out, and that's an extremely effective way to learn, but it's completely unscalable. Computers and the internet have allowed us to like massively scale training, but we've lost that like personal touch. And so AI allows us to now kind of bring the two together. And to the extent that you can roll out technologies to work alongside, sort of listen and mentor alongside an individual, that's where the real learning happens. And so for us, we kind of like, we break it down and we describe it like this when we're working with clients in terms of step one is sort of awareness. Like, how do you develop the awareness across an organization of thousands of people? And here, from a communications and a cross-cultural perspective, it's not like it was before, where you would say, okay, here's a workshop, and people from India communicate this way, and people from China communicate this way, and then you have to like mentally map who are you talking to, and then you like layer on this map, this culture, and it doesn't work in this world that we're in right now. People are able to context switch. What's important is understanding that you're in a world where what you said is not necessarily what the other person is going to hear. Right? And you can, depending on your organization, do this in a variety of different ways, but it's ultimately baselining where you're at, assessing where people are at today, having conversations with leadership and with management. Once you've figured out that baseline, then the next step is practice. It doesn't matter how much you learn. If you're not able to actually practice negotiation training, practice delivering presentations or whatever, it's never going to get dialed in. And you absolutely don't want your first practice session to be in a live negotiation with somebody from a different culture, and you're going to roll out the latest stuff that you heard on some webinar a week ago. Simulation. AI is unlocking incredible capabilities to simulate very bespoke environments. Katie, you mentioned like personalization. Here you can get right down to the level of, I'm going to have a conversation with this individual, and here's their background, and here's my relationship. And AI can really help you prep for that conversation. And then the last thing is the reinforcement part of it. So in the flow of work, you come out of a meeting and you're like, hey, AI coach, this is what happened. I have a UK manager. He told me I did a good job, but I might consider changing these 3 things. So I guess I'm done. And your coach will be like, oh, it's a UK manager? No, you need to change those things now. Like, that's a problem. And so understanding that in the moment, I think, is what locks it in, and it scales.
What do you know? What I love about that so much, Mel, is that L&D have traditionally and notoriously been very small teams with vast workforces, vast disparate workforces spread across huge geographical differences. And so we've asked the question, how can we do this? What you've talked about there, and with the power of AI and modern tools, is how should we do this? And we can talk, if we have an outcome in mind. I mean, you said it with with tongue in cheek a moment ago about the way we used to do this, master and apprentice. But you just imagine now the benefit of that, and you say that there are many reasons why you can't now. There isn't one master. There are many masters, like with this one here. But were you to go back to that model, what would that look like? Well, the master would say, this is what I do and this is why I do it. AI tools can do that now for anybody in any role. So, and that's just one example of how, instead of being confined by 25, 30 years of this is the way that we've done this, the confines and the restrictions of people in our organizations who say, I'd like some training and I'd like this in it, we actually push our stakeholders and say, but what is it that we're looking to achieve? How will you know this has been successful? What are the consequences of doing nothing? You know, unearthing all the great stuff that comes as a result, and then them admitting to themselves, well, the consequences would be unfathomable. We must do something brilliant. So are you willing for me to have the right amount of analysis, the backing, and all of this good stuff, and leave behind the things perhaps that we've struggled to make stuff work, like how many people, you know, this is one way to get the chat lit up. How many of you struggle to get your line managers to help to support with the development so that it actually becomes embedded after a learning event? I can guess most of you, but imagine that the solutions weren't as fragile or so distant from where people work that you were reliant upon the line managers in doing that, because you had the vision of what was required and you're thinking about this in a different way, utilizing the tools in order to do that. Now, Mel, I'd love to stay with you for a moment, because if you think about the future of performance-driven L&D, what role will cross-cultural communication and conversation management play in helping organizations not just achieve goals, but sustain them globally?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question because it kind of forces us to be more forward-looking. I think there's a few things that you could think about. First and foremost, seeing as we're on the topic of AI, let's just stick with that. AI is continually expanding its scope of automation. Right? It's automating tasks and workflows and processes at an incredible speed. What it's not really touching yet, and I think what continues to persist moving forward at an organizational level, is the human side of things. Things like judgment, things like creativity, decision-making, collaboration. And all of this falls apart if you're not able to manage conversations effectively. This is at its core, it's collective communication. Globalization is not going away anytime soon. I think as companies become more and more capable at managing pools of distributed global talent, but functionally integrated, then that model just continues to rise. And the fluidity of it, it probably becomes even more fluid as you're able to move locations, chase the talent, or whatever the case may be. And so being able to manage these conversations is what's going to be able to keep organizations both fluid but also cohesive. And I think if you look at the trends that we've been seeing, sort of the macro trends, just in the last 4 years, geopolitical events, macroeconomic trends, tariffs, immigration policy, all of this is driving companies to be more dynamic and more flexible, more diverse. And so it's the conversation between the individuals of those organizations, wherever they end up being, however they're moved around, or whomever they're working with, is what ultimately like binds the company together and allows it to sort of maintain its competitive advantage into the future, despite AI doing its thing.
And I think that to put that spotlight onto L&D as well, you're talking about the very human superpowers. There's always this conversation about when do we use AI? Will AI take over this? And you know, the counter argument is, yeah, but we need to just be more human, and you know, whatever that means. But you're talking about the human superpowers inside an organization in order to be agile, respond to risks, and I suppose future-proof as well, regardless of whatever black swans might come along and disrupt. And so when we put the spotlight on L&D and think, well, how are you doing that to ensure it? Because trends will come and go. And over the last 25, 30 years, depending on whether it's been micro-learning, button us this way, or I'm not sure anybody's around long enough to remember interactive video over here, the LXP is going to change anything. You know, you spend a lot of money and a lot of credibility thinking this one's going to help us. But the thing is, when we look at what we are doing, what our strategy is inside our organization, are we aligned to what the organization's trying to achieve? Do we have access to the right people to inform our strategy? Have we got a learning council to ensure that we are building with and for and partnering our clients rather than delivering for and consider ourselves more as a support? Are we investing in our consulting skills and our analysis so that we can make the use of data? We did have a question on here about the absence of data, but if you can understand enough what the requirement is and how the person is perceiving that, then you can you can at least establish a baseline of what that data is so that you can plan to make impact. But so what I'm talking about is L&D maturity in this. It's what every successful L&D leader learns along the way, but it isn't in L&D school, as it were, if there is an L&D school, that teaches you that it's not about the quality of the learning or the success of the implementation, which is going to get you the credibility and therefore the impact. It's your own personal qualities and what you decide your L&D department should and could stand for, which could include making a meaningful impact on the business, being able to demonstrate that, partnering with the organization, not simply taking orders, and all of the good stuff that comes within it. And I think that if we wish to make impact, then we need to take a look seriously about how we are performing inside the organization, the expectations we set ourselves, and how we control the narrative inside our organization so everybody expects more. Now, Katie, I'd love to come to you again, because it's when L&D focus on performance, which affecting the work where it happens, and doing so with subject matter experts, that we can move the needle at scale. So how are you doing this?
I have that conversation every week. I have
Oh, do
people coming
you?
to me, I need more learning. I need you to do this. And I'm like, I said, I can build that for you, but that ain't going to fix your problem.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and more learning in the system isn't, what's going to help here. And I'm so proud because my team kind of shifted into this kind of more, we've been building the skills, consultative skills, kind of being more of the strategic advisor. And as I'm doing, it's year-end review season, I was telling them, and as I'm learning more about my teams, I have got leaders in the business now talking about how we activate skills. I've got leaders in the business who are not learning people talking about, I need to activate these skills within my team leaders. Okay, Katie and her team have already done this learning. It's on me now to make sure that they're actually doing it. And I was so excited because that's a big step. But we still struggle with the constant kind of, I need this, give me this, I need to do this from all different angles. But we are building those muscles. And data does help. I mean, we did a comparison where we were trying to tell people we need to do this in functional teams, not just open enrollment. So we compared it. We did a course open enrollment, we did a course in functional teams, and we showed the impact that it was significantly different. I have that one slide and I get whatever, I just put that slide up and boom, I get what I need, from doing it. But as L&D professionals, we have to be able to have the right conversations with leaders, with subject matter experts. We've got to start figuring out, better ways of using data and having, richer, more business focused conversations than just the learning kind of conversation about getting it done, if that makes sense.
Oh, completely, 100%. There's a phrase I've used over the years, which is we can't wait for the planets to align. And those planets being when we've got a learning culture, when we've got C-suite backing, when we've got department heads who sponsor learning, or when line managers take over their share. We cannot wait, because I will tell you something for nothing, they will never align. That will never align. You will achieve your learning culture by solving the problems inside your organization that could be answered with how can developing our people help us to achieve X. It starts with alignment, and once you're speaking the language of the business, then it all comes together. And one more question that I'd like to ask to wrap this up. Mel, I'll come to you first. And then we've got lots of questions coming in, which is brilliant. How can L&D leaders combine maturity and incorporate AI and data in order to service and support organizations across cultures, and do so in a way that makes a demonstrable impact? Well, maybe Mel, let's start with you, and Katie, I'd love to invite you in too.
Yeah, so I want to touch on something that's a little bit related to this. I guess it's a caution when you think about leveraging AI across cultures. So AI has opened up this whole new world that will allow L&D leadership to be massively more effective in their ability to understand where the problems lie and how to fix those without having to become experts in every specific area, without having to have conversations with every single lead or manager and become domain specific. One of the concerns that we see when we're doing this, specifically with respect to cross cultures, is that the large language models today, and most generative AI, but we'll focus on large language models, they're empowering asynchronous communication and asynchronous learning, but the way they're doing it tends to have this homogenizing effect on culture. Most large language models have been trained on the internet. Most of the internet is English. And so when you think about it from a cultural norms perspective, you think about things like translation, right? That's a big one now. People on Slack all over the world will just translate incoming messages without needing to think about how it needs to, like what the actual meaning is, translate it into their native language and then move on. Or Zoom transcripts, right? The transcript from this thing can easily be translated into 100 different languages. In doing that translation, the models will completely strip out, or typically strip out, any of the or a lot of the cultural components, right? Idioms, for example, just get removed. An idiom means something to somebody who understands it. It means nothing to somebody who doesn't understand the culture that it's steeped in. All of this gets suppressed when you start rolling out solutions that are AI-based across multiple different cultures. And so I think the thing from an L&D perspective, when you're thinking about leveraging AI to empower or to extend your reach into global offices, is how do you do it in a way that respects the individual cultures of those offices, right? And it's not difficult, it's not challenging. It comes back to, again, awareness. As long as you're aware that the problem exists, then constructing the right prompts that may yield content or may drive automated translations or whatever the case may be of existing content, to the extent that those are highly culturally aware, allows you to maintain the sort of individuality of the different cultures within your organization. Because when, obviously, like we know this, when you lose that, when you force everyone into a monoculture, you lose the benefits of that diversity in your end product. So yeah, I think that would be my big take. I don't know if it fully answers the question that you asked, David, but I think it's an important caveat for L&D leadership to think about in this world. AI really empowers you to be a rock star.
Oh, I think that's solid advice, regardless of what the question was, Mel.
I told you I'm going to ramble.
Katie, any words of wisdom?
My only thought there is, like, we get, we're global, but we get feedback sometimes that we're North America centric, right? We just, because that's where a lot of the centralized stuff, where the hub is. And I think it's just being very sensitive and bringing along everybody on the journey and making sure that you are collaborating and coordinating with others outside of wherever you're based, so that everybody feels included in part of the whole process. So that's just, it's a basic thing, but I think we have to be aware of that.
Brilliant. Thank you. And I'll invite folks to pop their questions in the Q&A. We're going to I see we do have some, so we'll be busy for the rest of the time. There's no doubt, panel. But while we're asking for those, Mel, would you like to just speak to this slide for a moment? You're on mute. That's it.
But I'm still technologically incompetent. You'd think after all these years. I think I mentioned this earlier in the preamble, but one of the things that we've been pushed for from our customers, and that we've started to really lean into, is the idea of understanding the baseline capabilities of your organization, whether it's straightforward communication or cross-cultural communication, whatever the case may be. To that end, part of the product that we're building is, you think of it as diagnostics. And so for people on this call that are interested, anybody really, we start out with completely free diagnostics for individuals within the enterprise, so that you can understand where everybody is and then assign the training as necessary. Part of the reason for this, and I think this is a larger challenge in general for L&D, not just from communications perspective, but skills across the board, is you may not fully understand who is in need of the training, but a lot of offerings sort of require you to sign up for training without actually helping you understand whether or not a specific individual would actually benefit from that. And then how would you measure the ROI of that particular individual? And when you're dealing with thousands of employees, like you said earlier, David, it's usually like one L&D person per 1,000 employees distributed. This becomes like a massive challenge. So the way we think about it is diagnose, we can do that. And then we move on to, like, in the flow of work, AI-driven coaching courses, things like that. But let me leave it at that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mel. And I just want to mention that if you've got your phone handy and you fancy scanning that QR code, I did launch a L&D Performance Academy with the rest of the 360 Learning team just last week. And a lot of the shifts that we've been talking about here today, which aren't mapped elsewhere because it is new, we are responding to changing expectations due to AI and the challenges that it all brings. But if you're looking to align with strategy, to influence stakeholders, make the very most of AI in learning and development, and cut through the noise to understand the signal, then I'd recommend that you take a look via the QR code. It's all completely free, and you'll notice that a lot of your L&D peers are already collaborating over different modules within that academy. So I will come to the questions, and of course we can, I'm going to stop sharing here so I can see your questions, but we can certainly provide you with the links otherwise. So questions on here. So anonymous attendee has asked, how do we go about influencing tech teams to stop hiring for technical skills only, which AI and skills training can help with, and start looking at power skills, communication skills during the hiring process? Anybody like to answer that?
I mean, it's not hiring how to hire, but my team has worked closely with our tech teams in terms of helping them build those skills. So we've had some situations where people were hired for very technical reasons, and then the role changed into something that was much more consultative. And so we were able to work with some of these folks in terms of teaching them kind of those skills. And some of them made decisions around, maybe this isn't the role that I want. I want to do something more technical. So they look for something else within the firm or outside. And others have embraced it and really kind of stepped into it. So that's kind of how we've managed that.
And any advice as far as that's concerned, Mel? Have you seen anything?
Yeah, I think one of the important things is to ask why. So like, why do you want to do this? And is the reason you want to do this aligned with the hiring manager's reasons for wanting to hire an individual? A lot of times hiring managers, especially on the tech side of things, are tasked with some overwhelming task, whatever it is, front end, back end, building out mobile apps. And that's how they're being measured. And so for them, the most important thing is to be able to get the right people with the right technical skills in place today in a potentially competitive job market. And so adding on all of this additional stuff that they need on top of that becomes challenging. And so I think it's an alignment question. How do you align your reason for wanting these skills with the hiring manager's need to hire for a very specific technical role? And if you can do that at that level, then it's a tactical question of sort of hiring rubrics and things like that.
Mm. And the only thing I'd add in there as well is that some of those folks making those hiring decisions are mitigating risks that they perceive in their own minds. So if you want to change their minds, don't try to tell them, try to influence them. You need to show them your success stories of how you've taken people who had the power skills and you've helped to deploy them elsewhere where perhaps they didn't have the refined technical skills. In learning and development, sometimes it's more powerful to show than tell, and maybe that's something that we can do as well. Sue Joy's asked a question on here: why there's an influence gap between the CFO and CLO, and how to fill that gap. What do you think, Katie? Where do you start?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't have to play in that space, but I know my chief learning officer is working closely with a set of leaders within the organization, and she does have to influence. She does have to kind of navigate a lot of things, actually. But and many times it is kind of like, this is what we're doing, and how do you figure out what you're going to do within this constraint or within this set of guidelines, and then she navigates that. But she also does a lot of showing, like what David just talks about, right? Showing. And if we don't do this, this is the consequence for not doing that. And okay, they may say, okay, we're going to live with that, but at least she's having that discussion around, here's what we need to deliver this, take that out. And, like tech resources, you're pushing us to do XYZ. Well, if you're not going to give us the funding to do that, then we can't do it. And here are the consequences for that. So she's having those kinds of conversations on a regular basis.
Mel, would you add anything there?
Yeah, I can add a little bit with the caveat that I'm neither a CFO nor a CLO. I think the key is the language that you use there. You use the term influence and you use the term power. And just based on a lot of the conversations that we have, where we'll start with people that are more on the CLO side of things, and then as negotiations move into the money side of things, it starts to move into procurement and finance. One is influence and one is power. And I've often found that on the CLO side of things, influence skills are high, because you need to be able to convince large organizations without having domain-specific knowledge to do something that benefits the entire company without having a big stick. The CFO, on the other hand, has like a tremendous amount of data and ultimately holds the balance sheet, the income statement in their hand. That's power. You need to be able to align those to the extent that you can.
I'd throw in there as well, the CFO, one of the key jobs of a CFO is to ask what the return is going to be on any investment. And he's going to ask absolutely everybody. And if your answer is, we'll provide learning to everybody, or anything that's like it, that's no return. I'll go back to what I mentioned before. The expected and requested version of learning and development is very low maturity. I'd compare it almost to another perk that like gym membership or access to some other subscription, because the whole give people something that they can attend or look at or consume and leave them to do the hard work, it's akin to a perk. So if the CFO's looking, and right now CFOs are under a lot of pressure to reduce operating costs, if there is no demonstrable return for the organization in learning, then what if they did cut a bit? What would the consequences be? Now, that's a challenge rather than something we should accept, because all the things we've been talking about, which is looking to affect performance, understanding and closing actual skills gaps, saving your organization money when it comes to cross-cultural differences, and standing for impact across your entire L&D strategy and offering, is a way to plan to be valuable and then execute on that. So it's a long game, but it does start and end with us, without the planets necessarily needing to align prior to that. We've come to the end of the questions in the Q&A, and one more. Sujoy is getting his money's worth. He's asked, do you think the way CLO presents impact needs a big shift? Katie, what would you say?
Well, I mean, I think in our world, it works, but in general, again, you have to come to the business in their language, on their terms, right? For my dissertation research, I interviewed like 18 learning leaders. And one of the key themes was how you speak to these people makes a difference on what you get and the support that you receive. So if you go in with, as you said, kind of learning completion numbers, they don't really care, right? If you go in with, okay, because of this, I was able, these 300 people, it took them 6 months rather than 2 years to get up to speed, and it saved us this much money. And, from looking at retention numbers and all that kind of stuff, that has more power than, just I had 300 people take, 8 hours of learning, so you have to come at it with them and what they care about and what matters to them, and not be pedantic, not use learning speak. That was a big thing. They don't care about learning speak. So people have to shift how they talk to business leaders.
Yeah. Anything to add to that, Mel?
No, not really. I think you guys both covered it perfectly. I think data is what gives you the power. You've already got the influence. Just make sure it's the right data and you'll be okay.
Bingo. That's it right there. And I think that's a brilliant point at which to draw a line under this. Thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you everybody for your questions as well, and your contributions in the chat. Katie, thank you very much. As also Mel, thank you, and Paola, thanks for hosting us. Hope to see you again all soon.
It was great. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.